Hey friends, Rodney Rodriguez, Dirty Air. Thank you all for such the great feedback that we've had, or that I've had, with kind of renewing old memories of races past that I've been doing here on the YouTube page. Really cool to kind of go back and think of the times of the past with old classic races. And I did get a message from a Twitter subscriber at the Rodney R is my Twitter X handle, whatever you want to call it, that wanted to talk about the 1981 Busch Clash, because I've talked about that many times in the past, to where in these days now of the NASCAR world, when it came to the new car, when it came to we had the car tomorrow, we had the next gen car, we had all of this, but 1981 was a year that really changed a lot of things, because that's when you had the big wheelbase car, the big old long wheelbase car. And then 1981 came around, and here we went to the short wheelbase car. The downsized car, as they called it back in 1981, is how they termed all of that. And just kind of a review of that race, because that was really the one that put that car in front of most people. And just a couple of things about this Clash is, now that you have the Clash, the Coliseum, all the different variations that you've had of the Clash. That race originated back in 1979, where it was for pole winners of the previous season. Well, 1981, you had seven. You had seven cars that were a part of that race in a downsized car. So definitely a different time. So let's go back and take a look, courtesy of the YouTube, and this is from SMIFF TV, I believe it is, on the old YouTube machine. Let's go back and relive the 81 Clash at Daytona.
Baker wins the Clash 1 year ago. Waltrip, with a lap to go, was in first.
Of course, that's a big cars back in those days. 79, 80. Take a look at who's going to be the co-host coming up here. Take a look at this.
This is Dale Earnhardt, the Grand National champion. And how about it, partner? What do you think? Now, you did not qualify. You didn't win a pole last year, champ. How come?
Well, it was more interested in winning the championship, I reckon. We tried, early in the season and even down to close to the end of the season, but it looked like we had a shot at the championship, so we really put it into that.
Dale Earnhardt, the national champion, joining us in the booth today. The story of Speed Weeks 1981 is a story totally different than any in the history of Daytona. A complete new look. The cars are downsized. They're narrower. They're shorter. And Ned Jarrett earlier took a look at that story.
Well, Ken, there's a new dimension this year in NASCAR racing. Because of the demand of the public for smaller cars, NASCAR had to follow suit. Here's the car that they've been using in the past. It's much wider across the front end. It's also higher off the ground. Now let's take a look at one of the new cars that they'll be racing in 1981. This car is lower. It also is narrower across the front. A tremendous amount of wind pressure goes on the front, which has a tendency, of course, to push down. But the real dramatic change is in the rear. The 8081 cars are shorter, which makes a difference in how the air flows across them. You look at the old car, and it has a nice sloped rear window, which puts pressure on the spoiler as the air flows across it. But this car has a straight rear window, and some say that the air actually swirls as it comes across here, which would have a tendency to lift the car off the ground. And with the pressure that's being put on the front, that is causing problems, especially in the turns. They haven't had an opportunity to run these cars in a race yet, but the Clash, of course, will tell them a lot about how they will handle in traffic. But there's one car here that's different. Bobby Allison and his crew chief, Waddell Wilson, are going in a different direction. They're trying a 1981 Le Mans. They found a car that still has the sloped rear window. Maybe it'll put the kind of pressure here that they need as compared to the straight window that we look at on the other cars that are in the field. All the other drivers are concerned about this car and what it might do in this race. We'll find out in a few minutes.
There it is.
David Hobbs has been talking.
Back to the old days right there. You've got the racers trying to figure out different ways to do stuff right there, and that's exactly what Waddell Wilson and that team did back in 1981, and that really was the story of all of that. But think about what he's talking about right there: the demand of the public to have a smaller car. This is really, I mean, what has happened these days with, I mean, cars now, for folks that are talking about, well, these really aren't stock cars. I mean, take a look around at what you're driving on the street. I mean, this is the same shit that happens right now, but this was back in 1981 when this was going on. Those little bitty cars, slope back windows, all of that. Man, this was such a great story, and this was back in those days. I think you guys realize, if you're old enough to remember back to this race. I mean, there was no testing like Ned was talking about right there. They never tested these cars. The test was in the Clash and in the Uno races, in the qualifying races, which, if you remember, in the 150s, I think it was back in those days, you had cars that Connie Saylor, John Anderson, they flipped upside down because the wind was all fucked up on the downforce on those cars. There was no downforce back in those days. So yeah, that just kind of a preview of what's to come right there. So let's dive back in and listen to some of the drivers talking about
Younger
this.
brother Bobby from Hueytown, Alabama, in the Ken Childers car. Donnie is relaxed, ready to go also in the black and gold car number 12. And the controversial car in the field, the car number 28 from Hueytown, Alabama, is Bobby Allison. Bobby, you look relaxed and look like you're ready to go.
Well, I hope so. The guys have worked awful hard, and Harry Rainier has really put out an effort for us to run this tough lawn car and run well.
And Harry Rainier is the owner of this stable. He's been in racing now for about 3 years. And from the livery of Hoff Ellington of Wilmington, North Carolina, the car number 1, Buddy Baker, a former winner of this race, one of the hardest chargers of all. Buddy, what's he going to take here today?
Ned, we really don't know. We just hope the cars are good and stable and we can put on a race that the Busch people deserve, because it is a great event, and if the cars will stay on the racetrack, we're going to put on a good race.
Well, if the car will stay on the racetrack, Buddy Baker will put it right up to the front. And the fellow who drove the pole position is Darrell Waltrip. He was running up front in this event last year when he took the white flag, but he wound up in 5th place. He's driving the Junior Johnson car, one of the greatest engineers in auto racing. Darrell from Franklin, Tennessee. Are you ready for him, Darrell?
Let's go, Ned. I'm getting nervous waiting.
What do you really expect here today? You're starting up front. Is that an advantage or a disadvantage?
You never know. I hope it's an advantage for me. I need it.
Good luck. Well, that tells the story, I think, Ken. Back to you now.
We will continue with more live coverage of the Clash from the Daytona International Speedway after this word from your local station.
That was the first year that Darrell Waltrip moved into the Junior Johnson car. And it was the beginning of a lot of really cool things right there for Waltrip and Junior Johnson as they began their dynasty together, winning the championship there in 81 and 82, and then again in 1985. A really good run of stuff for him. But you remember that story, the Le Mans right there, the 28 car with Harry Rainier and Bobby Allison behind the wheel of that car. And that was a year where I remember being a kid as a NASCAR fan, that it was really weird for me. I didn't really understand silly season, but silly season had never really happened the way it happened that year. So you saw Buddy Baker right there. He moved to the Hoss Ellington car. He had been, I believe, in the 28. Of course, Waltrip had been in the 88 car for Dygard, and you had Cale Yarbrough that had been in the Junior Johnson car that went over to MC Anderson running a limited schedule. You had Benny Parsons that had been in the MC Anderson number 27 that moved over to Big Bud Moore in the number 15 car, which, by the way, won at Texas World Speedway, the last NASCAR race at Texas World Speedway. And then you had David Pearson, the Silver Fox, who had been driving for different owners. I mean, in 79, he had jumped in the Ellington car and doing different things. I mean, all the years with the Wood brothers, he jumped in and drove the 16 car. He's in the Busch Clash as well. So that was really a crazy year, not only in the sense that the car changed, but you had drivers that moved around, not like you had ever seen before, that you had all the movement with the drivers doing different things. So anyway, let's go back and dive into the, I think we'll go about halfway into this race. Obviously, the car to beat was going to be the number 28, that was the guy. But let's dive in and watch the end of the 1981 Busch Clash.
Bobby's in the pit. Bobby's in the pit.
Bobby Allison is pitting his automobile. He is out of the clash. Something is wrong. Let's go to Ned Jarrett.
And they say that one of the right side tires is going flat on the car. Very unusual to have to stop in a 20-lap race. Bobby Allison very disgusted after having broken away from the field. Waddell Wilson and the crew changing the right side tires. But this is going to put him out of it. Ford in the way, but far behind.
A whole lot of making up to do. He can't do it here, can he, Dale?
I don't think so. It's a bad break for him. This really is. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Halfway this time by.
Old days of the Clash right here. They used to pay money for halfway bonuses and lap 10 bonuses and all this. Check these guys coming around here. I mean, look at this. Yeah, Waltrip up on the point. David Pearson right there behind him, and they all stack. Remember, you had 7 cars in this race. And here they come down the front stretch trying to slipstream. No, nobody worried about what's going to happen right here with Waltrip leading down the back straightaway about 3 car lengths. Here comes a 12 car. That's Donnie Allison down pit road. Kind of one of those one-offs right there where Donnie jumped into this car. Hueytown, Alabama, 1981. Of course, not the best year for Donnie, as he had the wreck later on in the World 600 that ended his career for most parts. Here comes David Pearson down to the inside. Take a look at that. Here comes Benny Parsons. Look at this. This is great racing.
Benny keeps trying to move up little by little, and he does so. He's in second now.
From the rear, Benny Parsons is into second place. Yesterday, Darrell Waltrip told me, he said, you know those pictures you were getting on CBS of us steering the cars through the tri-oval? He said, you're going to get us some pictures that will be stirring this year. And boy, they certainly are. You can see him just having to fight the wheel to keep that car stable.
And that was one of the stories I remember back in 1981 where they were talking about how to drive these things around there, because obviously they were, now that we talk about aero, but look at these cars up on the top side. And that's back when Daytona was bumpy. Check them out going around right there. Benny Parsons up on the top side. And it's Waltrip in the 11, the Mountain Dew Buick, leading the pack down once again.
In fifth.
The cars that are running together look like they're sticking pretty good to the trial one now. Maybe they've settled down a little bit.
You want to make a prediction here?
Not really.
Dale Earnhardt with us today. You'll see him, the national champion, next Sunday here, fighting it out with 40 others to win the greatest stock car race in the world, the Daytona 500. Back straightaway at 190 plus miles an hour. It is still Waltrip with the advantage.
I like the sound of those cars right there, guys. Listen to those things going around the racetrack, man. Those motors are humming. And you got a pack all around right there. The days of all the tight pack racing, these cars had never been on the racetrack until the Clash. Here's Parsons looking up on the top side. David Pearson is right there, and they continue to race this thing out, all chasing the Mountain Dew Buick. And look at that, more money. It's like a dirt track race. Money on the line right here as they continue to race on.
Why is that Ford such a good car this year, Dale?
Well, the car is better. The back end of it is better to draft with, too. Just like the 28 car, it's got a slow back draft more than what the Buicks or Pontiacs or Oldsmobiles have. And they seem to draft better. And he's doing so now. He can't run as fast, I don't think, out front as Darrell can because of the front end of the car.
Let's go to Ned Jarrett.
Ken, we've checked with the pit crews of both of the Allison brothers who had to come in for a change of tires, and they say that they picked up some debris on the racetrack that caused the tires to be cut and, of course, to go flat. So very unusual, as we pointed out earlier here, and certainly a tough break for the Allison brothers.
We've had 2 shunts in the ARCA race. The latest report is that 2 of those drivers that we showed you earlier, Johnny Halford of Spartanburg, South Carolina, and the driver of number 75, Shat, have been taken behind.
Race along here for all that additional bonus money. And take a look right here. Here's Benny going to the top side. Parsons kept taking a look up on the top side, but he would always get back in line. And there's 5 to go right here. You got Pearson sitting in the 3rd spot. Waltrip bringing him out of turn 4. And here they came. You had a Buick. You had a Ford. He had a Chevrolet and an Oldsmobile. 1, 2, 3, 4 in the 1981 Clash.
Stable when they all three the cars group up like they are. Any idea what the 28 cars running lap times? Is he running as fast or faster than the cars in the race? The leader.
Can't tell you that right now. We'll put a clock on him this time by. Meanwhile, back straightaway. Front five all locked together. $50,000 for first prize in this race. And Parsons begins to nip away at Darrell Waltrip.
He hasn't tried crashing by him. It's interesting to see what he's going to do. Is he going to just stick there or what? His car seems to be working before, and David Pearson seems to be working up on him.
I love these old pictures right here of Daytona back in the day when they would hit that corner out of turn 4 and the cars would bounce around and they'd make their way out. Downforce was terrible. And look at that. Now you got top 5. Now you got the top 5. And this was a year that Darrell Waltrip had bought himself out of the contract with Dygaard with a lot of help from Junior Johnson and some other folks that put himself in this car that won him those championships and made him into legendary status back when he was Darrell Waltrip, not DW, back when he was a race car driver.
The east turn. Off they come out of turn number 4. Where the cars get on the loosest edge, the most perilous moments. They're in turn 4. And here you see them fighting their way back to the line. Still, Waltrip in front. Can Waltrip hold on? Can he maintain, stabilize this lead, and win his first Clash?
Well, that's interesting to see, doesn't it? Because he seems to pull away from Benny Parsons when he comes off 4. So Darrell may have the edge right there. This car runs straighter off of 4 than the rest of them.
Waltrip has now earned $15,000 thus far since this race began. Moving in from car number 15, Benny Parsons.
Take a look right here. One of the coolest things of watching this video, even though it's in standard definition, is as Ned was talking about when he showed the 2 cars side by side. Look how high these cars are off the ground. There was nothing there with aero. There was no ground effect. This really was what you drove off of the showroom floor. I had neighbors across the street. They bought a 1981 Buick Regal, and it looked just like the one that Waltrip was driving right here in this race. Here comes Parsons. He's going to try to make a move right there in car number 15. Let's watch the last lap and a half right here, lap number 19. More money going to Darrell Waltrip. Let's finish this thing out. The 1981 Busch Clash.
Pearson is in 3rd. Baker is in 4th. Deployed in 5th. Taylor Yarborough. Baker now makes a stab at 3rd position.
Baker's going for the bucks. He wants to be up there with the rest of the guys.
Baker into 3rd. A $5,000 bonus for leading the most laps, and that $5,000 belongs to Darrell Waltrip. What a great start to Speed Weeks for Waltrip. A $5,000 bonus. And his earnings now stand in this race at $16,500 plus the $5,000 bonus, kicking him up to about $21,000. Riding the pyramid, Waltrip, but will he win it all? Benny Parsons, the 1975 Daytona 500-mile champion. One of the most likable people in motorsports. Hangs on the rear bumper. They go to turn 3.
Benny couldn't make his move down the backstretch. I would have thought he'd made it there.
Waltrip getting very high in 3 and 4. He's above that last white line. You don't like the line?
All the cars have been running up there. All of them.
Back they come.
I don't think Benny can do it. Waltrip's going to win it. Waltrip wins.
Checkered flag is down, and the winner of the Clash, taking the checkered flag, Darrell Waltrip, is the 3rd different man to pull it off.
There it was. 1981 Busch Clash there at Daytona. 15 minutes worth of work, and he pocketed all that money. It's chump change nowadays. That's a good short track race with the kind of money that Darrell Waltrip won right there. But really, I love that race. I saw that live. I actually have that race somewhere on cassette, kind of hanging the old microphone there over the TV just to have that. So really cool race right there. So thank you for that submission at the Rodney R asking about the 1981 Daytona 500. pardon me, Busch Clash. If you don't know, so then the next week you had the Daytona 500. You had the 125, 150, 150s, 125s. You had them on Thursday. I talked about the two cars that went upside down. The following Sunday, you had the Daytona 500. Richard Petty wins the Daytona 500, his seventh and final Daytona 500 in one of those Buicks, one of those Regals. It was a really good year of racing there in NASCAR, Winston Cup racing back there in 1981. And like I mentioned, Benny Parsons here in Texas winning the Budweiser 400 at Texas World Speedway. So a very synonymous year when it came to racing, NASCAR racing, and the final straw at that point in NASCAR racing in Texas. So please feel free to message me here on the YouTube page, at the Rodney R on Twitter, on the Facebook page, on the Revved Up page, or on the Dirty Air page. I would love to go back and watch these races with you guys. Share this. Let's go back and relive those memories, because before we know it, it's time to go racing at the Daytona 500. Guys, y'all have a great week. Dirty Air, man. This has been fun. The 1981 Busch Clash at Daytona.